You've heard a lot about the content and changes coming in Dragonflight, and we've got a lot more in store for you in the coming months.
Until then, we'll see you in Azeroth.
That's it? Is that the end? Okay. But
Use your words, Kyle.
All right, so well, I haven't had to, like I covered Heroes of the Storm, which very much felt on the outside of the whole scandal thing. We kind of had a position there where it was like we were already outside the company looking at it and being like, what the hell are you guys doing? What's going on over there? Because I had already quit WoW at that point. So I haven't really had to deal with my opinions of the company in that way, but I was really, really excited for WarCraft 3. I love RTS. WarCraft 3 is the reason I play computer games in the first place. And that burn was so personal. What they did to Heroes of the Storm, that was business. I understand. You got to delete a roller coaster at your roller coaster tycoon. You got to recover money. You went too hard on esports. You went too hard on a MOBA in 2017. Like, I get it. But what they did to WarCraft 3 is a personal hit that I have not forgiven them for. And any sort of thoughts of returning to WoW is going to make me deal with that pent-up anger I have about the scandal and WarCraft 3. So I'm working through that at the same time. I do like How to Train Your Dragon. I love How to Train Your Dragon. I think it's a blast.
Some of this is coming from, I feel like my thoughts about how unplayable I think current WoW is known. I wanted to leave that at the door. And if they didn't bring forward what I see as some of the absolute biggest failures of Warcraft writing, if they didn't bring that into the next expansion, I was kind of willing to look at it with an open mind, and I think they did that. I didn't see Azerite, frickin' Azeroth blood planet juice firing up out of cracks. I didn't see Sylvanas. I didn't want to see any of that, and I didn't see it. And so in that way, I like it. Like, this feels like a standalone expansion, the way I kind of liked it back in the day. Like, Vanilla felt like its own thing. BC felt like its own thing. Wrath of the Lich King felt like its own thing. Even Kato, which I don't really like, felt like its own. It's its own, contained story and experience. And that's what this feels like. Whereas Shadowlands felt like a direct sequel to BFA, and I didn't like BFA that much to begin with. So Shadowlands, like, already on the back foot as far as me caring. So in that way, I think that's why I'm coming at this with a more positive look. I'm like, just don't show me Azerite and don't show me Sylvanas, because I'm over it and I don't care. And I think you did a miserable job with those stories and making me care. I'm kind of back to basics. Like, I want to see cool zones, and I wasn't even thinking about flying, but their complete backpedaling of flying in the Hazakastas years, I think, is, to me, like, one of the most infuriating things in the world. I hate looking at devs and making them the poster child, and I don't like it when people are like, when they sit there, like, community-wise, speaking generally here, and they have these thoughts where they make the proclamations of, like, I don't like being told that I don't want this thing. But that is 100% how I feel about Hazakastas and flying. When Hazakastas has multiple times been like, yeah, we're like just avoiding it or pushing it off or turning it into yet another systems grind for an expansion. You want me to get grumbly on the level you are? That's where it exists. That's where I'm like, no, you're just wrong, and you refuse to listen to the community. If I remove my Arthas fanboyism, I think Legion is the best expansion they ever made, which was primarily, I would say, like, the modern WoW team. Like, modern WoW as I know it, I would say Legion is part of that. I think the second best expansion is Wrath of the Lich King, and Wrath of the Lich King had 2 endgame zones designed around flying, and all you had to do was pay for it. And you just got to experience it because you're already freaking flying. You already earned flying in BC. Why do I have to earn it again through mindless grinding? I feel very passionate about that. I think taking away flying and making it a chore is an insult to the years I've spent playing this game. So to me, that's a massive positive. I think you need to understand my thoughts on that to understand why when you say, oh yeah, no, we've got this like training your dragon flight mechanic where you're going to be kind of like a shitty flyer when you start and you'll be a better flyer as you progress. That's a big positive to me. Plus it looks good.
Do you think it'll be a non-flying mount for a time though? Like, does our dragon have to learn to crawl first before it can fly?
I think you're going to be able to glide or fall with style kind of a thing in the beginning.
Fun. Yeah, I'd
which
be
I'm
down
fine
for
with.
that.
I'm fine with it. That's okay. If it is this thing that while I'm playing, I just progressively get better, and as I progress through your zones, the later zones have just like full on flying in mind, and you designed them with this verticality where you took that into account, then I'm down with it. I really didn't like that you could fly at the beginning of Cataclysm. It was literally dive bomb. You'd be out trying to kill like a quest mob, and 20 people would descend out of the sky at 350% mount speed, murder the thing, and then fly straight back up. It was this like you would just fly along, dive bomb, kill the thing, get back up, fly to the next thing, dive bomb, kill it. And I didn't like that. I do think that impacted like the sense of exploration and seeing the next zone. Like, I'm not saying I just want to fly all the time from the get-go from day one, but I also don't want to wait until like a 0.2 patch and have to grind rep with a new frickin' faction or something either. To me, that's just like insufferable, and I don't want to do it. I like a middle ground. Like I've said back when I used to do WoW content, it came up a lot, and I'm like, yeah, Wrath did flying right. Wrath is how I think they should have always done flying, which is you start on the ground, and as you near end game, you can start flying again. And those later end zones, as you start kind of feeling like you're reaching that end game, we're going to empower you by giving you flying back, and the zones are going to be designed with flying in mind. I really liked that about Wrath.
They're going to have to work really hard to recover the story for me, because you added time travel, which automatically ruins so much of your cemented canon and how my brain will play with your pieces of lore and how I can construct them. And of course, it's changed ownership a lot, who's writing it, who's directing it. There's going to be those hiccups and those retcons. Those are fine by me, but I don't have a relationship to the world because of time travel and then going to the universe of the dead. Like, that was the first expansion I never bought, not because of hate for WoW or speaking with my wallet. I just simply did not care for a world at its current state of its current story where we were talking to dead characters, because that removed all the weight. If I'm talking to dead characters in Final Fantasy, I really care, because I really care about those characters. I did not care to visit anyone in death. Bringing back the Dragonflight is a huge possibility because those characters are so interesting, the dragons and their human forms. Their personalities are so interesting and layered, but they also have a lot of intricacy. Like, Alex Strazo's been through some serious shit. If we can tap into those storylines and make them relate to our character or more personal, and we kind of get on the level with those dragons, that it's something that I feel like I'm able to participate in and involve my character, then I can care about so much more just beyond the graphics or the systems, because I have that invested interest.
I'm with you there. I think that you're getting into part of why I think I'm leaning positive on this, is it just feels like we have the opportunity for a clean break from the BFA arc into Shadowlands, and to me, it looks like they're taking it. Shadowlands'
Story was really, really weak, and here they didn't give me a bad guy again. Like, the Titans are, and they may have like things. Like, why are we so nebulous about villains? I guess we weren't nebulous about the jailer, and he was bad, so maybe it's time to be nebulous again. But
that's fair. I guess, yeah, I did not come out of this having any clue who the villain is.
Like, what's wrong with their home? Like, why did they leave for 10,000 years? Why does it need saving? Why can't they, as giant dragon people, save it? Why do they need me? Because I'm the Maw Walker? Because I'm the champion? Like, what power do I have to influence? And there's your home. It looks fine. Looks normal,
that's an interesting thought. I guess through the lens of WarCraft, where everything is constantly trying to kill you, this looks normal.
Stone Boy, he's doing all right. He had to climb. He thored it, and he got through okay. So what influence do I have? What am I bringing to this island that the dragons are even going to need me? Someone who is all going to arrive on their shores and have to train a baby, whether it's gliding or actual flying, like, just fly up there and channel the thing. Don't wait for me, because you guys disagree with each other. Maybe we'll have to like play intermediary, but then the characters have to be that much more interesting. And I do think Rathion's that interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think Alex Straza is too. And Ysera she's dead now. Spoiler alert.
Wait, no, she came back all corrupted, right? Wasn't she like?
And then we killed her again.
Oh, it's okay.
Immediately. Yeah, she came back. She was corrupted, and we killed her, and she's she dead. And we saw her in Shadowlands.
Shadowlands, she like was a seed pod or something in like the light, and then she appeared. I thought she was back. I thought she came.
Not in the mortal world. She's back in the realm of death.
Oh, okay.
For the most part, I like the aspects. Who's boring? I guess Nosdormu. I couldn't tell you shit about Nosdormu. But Caligos, Alexstrasza, Chromie, they're all characters. There were implications at the end of Cataclysm. I don't really remember. I think it's like they're, it could be misspeaking here, but like they're mortal or something now. There's something happened to like their power and they're kind of like placed in the food chain with the death of Deathwing. I'm leaning positive. But again, it's like I'm coming from a place of like the kind of the lowest I've ever felt about WoW. So my expectations were kind of non-existent. So it's kind of like, I don't know, show me something that isn't, it does not have roots in BFA, and I'll be mildly interested. I'm not looking to go back to WoW full time. I don't really think I ever want to go back to that. Like, I don't think I ever want to go back to only gaming. Like, this is my only game. Like, WoW kind of gave me a gift by making me not care about it. Another thing in the back of my mind was, is this going to be another systems deep nightmare? Like, is this something that's going to ask me for all my time, or will I be able to, you know, go visit WoW and then bounce back to Final Fantasy XIV while still working on something like Elden Ring in the background? Is that something I can balance sanely without going too deep into it? And I guess they didn't really answer that. Although I will say nothing they showed looked like it was overly systems deep. Was that omission on purpose? I think it's very rare that there's a correct answer for most things in game design. And that's what I think I saw a lot of that here. And I was trying very hard to keep an open mind. So that's where some of this is coming from. But like with professions, they're going more specialized, which sounds more restrictive, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's different. It's what they've decided to do. It's the directions that they've decided to go. Whether it'll be successful or not, I can't say. We don't have the game. We're not playing it. But they're committing, which I always see as admirable. And I feel that way about talents as well. Like, to me, anytime there's something like a talent system, or even we see this in card games, like there's people in Hearthstone that are mad that you can net deck, and I'm just like, you're mad about communication, which you can't stop, and there's no way around that. If you build a system with a plethora of options that you can choose from, and you make those choices, whether it's a deck of cards, whether it's a talent system, there will be a meta will emerge, and the community will talk amongst each other and share that information, and that's how metas happen, and that is just always going to happen, and there's no way around that.
Right, the trust is fundamentally broken, which is why we sit here and go, like, ultimately the presentation, and yeah, you know, maybe scripted tables and whatnot, this is not a bad presentation, at least for a video game company. This was a really solid rundown of what they're planning.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of folks like in our chat room during this live stream is like, oh, that was so scripted, and it's like, yeah, but I mean, like, as someone who's been to every BlizzCon since 2010, like, it didn't feel that different from a BlizzCon panel. Like, they plan these things out. They have points they want to hit.
Except for the voice acting panels. Those were amazing, and those were curse-laden until they put a cap on that. That's
a very different product too, though, right?
Yeah.
Like,
those are awesome.
That's not there as a piece of marketing beyond look how cool our voice actors are. But if you went to the What's Next World of Warcraft panel on the Mythic stage, like that was what this is. It's just it was in a room with cameras as opposed to in a convention center hall. Now, as someone who's now into Final Fantasy XIV and has now experienced some of their live letters, I do kind of like that better. Like, I think it plays more to wide majority of invested gamers. Like, we're used to Twitch streams now, and we're used to less polish and a more kind of personable and approachable thing. Whereas, and I'm sure, like, they're definitely, like, if you like Yoshi P just sitting there in a room with a single like Logitech camera reacting to chat in real time, I'm sure they also still sit there and they think ahead of time of what they're going to talk about. I'm sure they still have bullet points, and I think you could do that for something like this. I get it. Like, you want to have your big spectacle and you want it to be polished and you want to show your cinematic, but I don't think there's any reason you can't show the cinematic and then just cut to, hey, we're sitting here in our home studios. We got our Yeti microphones. What's up? What's on everybody's mind?
Yeah, well, and they're missing that figurehead ultimately, like the Chris Metz and Ben Brode type. Like, there's not that Walt Disney at the Blizzard Studios that I feel that could do the fireside, you know, bend down on their knees, be like, "Hey kids, how's it going? How's it going out there? How y'all doing tonight? You doing good? That's awesome. That's awesome. You know, let's hang out a little bit." What do you know for the Horde? Like, let's do it. It's a very different atmosphere than Yoshi P, walking in looking like he exhausted, frankly. And that communicates to me. I'm like, dude, get some sleep, but thank you for being here.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the dev roundtables they had, like, clearly scripted to a degree. Have some Zoom rooms, like, all right, we're going to jump over to our dev table for the next 2 zones, and here they are. Like, and they seem like I don't know, they struck me as folks that could hold their own with a chat room. We don't have like a community figurehead, like it is like Hazakassis. We look to him as like the head of WoW, right? But he's just not that type of personality.
No, and he's broken during live discussions, and that's where that animosity, I think, is a too strong a word, but ultimately comes down to that lack of trust. It also depends on what topic we're talking. Like, a lot of people say that the raids have been the best they've ever been because Ian leads that as a raid game, and that's the sort of style game he's creating. I do think the BFA raids were really, really fun, and the mechanics were really, really enjoyable, particularly Mother and all that kind of stuff. There were some really unique things in there. And I really did like getting to go to the other tables and see like the actual in the trenches developers geeking out.
I'm coming down on it was a good showing. Once we started jumping to the developer tables, I think the opening was weak. The opening was really slow. I think it belabored the "we hear you" apology message.
It was it wasn't. They never say sorry. Like, that's what makes it such a hard pill to swallow and such a difficult apology to accept, because what I hear ultimately is, we listen to you and look what you got. That's what they're saying. It's so gross. It's so manipulative of a relationship in that way. Like, we heard you and you created Shadowlands after all. There you go. That was all you. Like, what? No, you interpreted. It's your job to sort through. And I know, like, there are definitely sides of WoW where they're trying to please too many people at once and they need to make a decision. But it's just... Ooh.
Yeah, there's part of it that's still just, it feels like the wall is still up between the community and the devs.
It's such a complicated scenario, and that's why I really like seeing the devs, the hardworking devs, because that's who we're rooting for in a lot of this. And those are the people that, on Twitter say things like, don't quit playing because you hate this current situation. Keep supporting us and we can make it better. Like, they're the ones with that voice. It's not corporate getting on and saying that. They just want to find new bodies, new fuel for the fire. Into the maze you go, trapped inside. That's where things get villainous. Like, the actual hardworking devs are the ones I'm cheering for and I want to see succeed. Because I have so many, over the years of working with Blizzard and interviewing, so many personal relationships with good people and awesome people on the inside there.
They're a massive team. It certainly seemed like they'd made an effort in this to showcase more members of the team, which I think was cool. And to me, that was probably the most effective thing about it, other than showing the cool Dragonflight animation. That sold me. But they've been doing what's been working for so long that when it didn't work, they don't know how to pivot, right? They've moved the game forward with, we believe this is the right call, and we're going to make that call, and we're going to stick with it. And for the most part, it worked, and it led to the peak of players in Wrath of the Lich King, right? Like adding flying was a big deal. Adding shaman and paladin to opposite factions was a big deal and upset some people. Just, if you remember all the way back in the day, BC was a big deal. People were like, what do you mean we're raising the level cap and the armor I farmed a year for in vanilla isn't going to be like the best armor in the game anymore? Like, that was controversial. WoW's entire history, its entire trajectory is these big calls from the developers. And in the early days, it was working and it led to the success and it led to their peak, right? And they just kept doing it. And Cataclysm didn't land for everybody. For me, I loved Mists. I think Mists was great. I think it's one of the best expansions. Draenor didn't land for, I feel like, the majority of players. I know some people love it. But, I don't know. That's how I look at it. I look at it, well, like, we made big calls and we stuck to our guns in the past, then it worked. We should own it now. Like, we think this is right and let's just stick to it. And I think they've had a really difficult time understanding when it is time to throw in the towel and make changes. I think that's where we're all kind of communally winded, right? Because it's like they had to cave in BFA, and now they're having to cave here in Shadowlands, and we're kind of looking at it like, well, why didn't you learn your lesson sooner? Because you already had to walk things back in BFA.
And I do wonder how much of that is just turnover, like how many lessons were learned. And then we hear a lot of corporate Blizzard is often treated like a startup company. It's about getting the best title you can at Blizzard and then using that to propel your next project on. And that's a shame when we see things like, Final Fantasy, where we have these very lived-in producers and directors who are seemingly, lifelong, and I hope they keep at it, that kind of keep that through line going and evolving the world and staying invested. When it comes to playing the game, I do think a lot of the fundamental ideas of how an MMO works have been challenged over the years by single-player games like roguelites and all. For instance, PvP is one that I think Final Fantasy is doing really well by presenting a challenge and not bringing gear into it, except that's the fantasy of WoW, right? Fantasy of WoW is you get gear and you get better and you get better and you smash the enemy because you have gear that they don't. And your time investment in that way for PvP in particular, it's such a great example of it, is absolutely rewarded upon the enemy's face. You put in the hours, you win. When it comes to raiding, I butt heads with add-ons. And I hope they can land this HUD update. Every World of Warcraft player has to be a hardcore. You cannot play WoW without watching a video. The second you ask someone to watch a video, you just took your audience and cut it down to 20%, if not more. And then you ask them to go get add-ons. What percent of that did you just cut out? What percent then has to know their build, has to know how to play their character, has to know their and you keep cutting down this audience and your content smaller and smaller and smaller. And then the players resent you because they can't get good groups or they can't find people who want to play at that level, even though you made that investment. Then you have to sit there while someone else dies in your raid because they want to run a bad spec because they're playing their way and it's their sub, and you just end up frustrated. And the game is starting to snowball that effect. So seeing things like a HUD update to me is really, that's the part I respond to. I want the player experience. Flying is a fantasy, and I love that fantasy. I think it's really cool. But the player experience is what is going to challenge me and make your game interesting, and why I would even go farm.
I don't disagree with you there. It's certainly how I feel about things that, especially Mythic. The Mythics have never really worked for me. I know it's very popular with a subsection of the player base, but to me, as someone who loves dungeons, turning Mythics into this Diablo adjacent grind to just get the same gear with slightly different stats, it's so unappealing to me. And there's add-ons that are required for that. They give you a Mythic rating, and then if you're just getting started, people are like, oh, why is your rating so low? And it's just I don't give a shit. I just want to run dungeons. But that's starting to get into the kind of stuff that they didn't really talk about much outside of the UI, which to me, I can say looking at it, I think it looks good. It looks like a nice update. And I think it's already been getting good, getting better over the years. I didn't use nearly as many add-ons when I was playing Shadowlands as I had in the past, and I felt like I was doing just fine. I did the first 2 raids in Shadowlands. I did just fine with pretty light add-ons. So if they're making a big concerted push to really upgrade the base UI, I don't know. You might be surprised in that regards if that's something you're really interested in.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go as far as to say they have to bring in universal indicators. I think that's a really interesting choice that Final Fantasy's made that makes me as a player go, I am rewarded. Look at this game knowledge that I brought to the table, and I know what group up means, and I know what spread out means. But I also think there's a lot of merit to going into a dungeon and being like, what the heck is a swirly circle? What's going to happen here? And I think that's a cool exploration that people have. But when you get into the high-end World First rating where the add-ons are battling the task and sometimes countering the task entirely, then World's First really doesn't have that much meaning anymore. And then that leaks down to the player's experience. They presented a really good fantasy with the dragon flying. I don't know about all the elements. There's a lot of fluff on that island, like elementals and birds and stuff and centaurs, but you got to fill it out. You got to make zones.
They sold me on going through the leveling experience. They have not sold me on seeing it through the end. I have no idea who the bad guy is. What's the threat? Who are we fighting? That's where it kind of missed for me. I'm more walking the line. I still want to WoW. I'm looking for an excuse to WoW again, for sure. That's kind of where I'm at. Based on this reveal, I'm definitely not going to become a WoW main. Like, I think I'm looking at this. I'm like, this looks good. I think I'm still a primarily Final Fantasy 14 player based on what I'm seeing here. And I would ask you, how do you feel on that? But I already know you're just like, oh yeah, no, still a Final Fantasy 14 player, because I've never heard you make so many disgusted noises than sitting through that 1 hour just now.
Yeah. My time is so well spent and feels so respected in Final Fantasy 14. It'll be very hard for it to pull me away. And that's what I meant when I was, curious if there's a world where you can have 2 MMOs, because you see kind of the estimations of subscriber numbers for Final Fantasy, and it goes with the patches. People kind of show up like they do for Netflix. Like they do their main story quest, they hang out, they check all the new stuff, and then they head out. And if you can trade back and forth with WoW, that would be interesting if they really nail this How to Train Your Dragon fantasy they're going for. There's a world where we can all go, oh, cool. That was a great little update, Final Fantasy 14. That was great. Hey, you want to go try out the new update over on WoW? Let's go check it out. And then we can trade back and forth. But fundamentally, I don't think that works with WoW's philosophy, because it is about gear at the end of the day. And how you get that gear needs to be fun. For us who don't care about the extreme smashing the enemy without the gear and PvP kind of side of things.
I would love to go back to the old ways of gear. Of like, I know what drops, I know where it drops, so I know what content I need to do to get what I want. I'd rather have a shopping list.
and the part that feels really cheap to bring up ultimately, because Final Fantasy is telling such a fantastic story. It is a RPG MMO rather than an MMORPG in that way. I just really want them to make me care. Like that, and that I didn't see that today. We talked about we need a villain. Like that's what, when we go through dungeons in Final Fantasy 14, we're diving our heads around the corner and peeking and be like, where's the villain? What's the guy? What's the bad guy look like? What's going on in here? Chains on the wall. What are the chains for? Are those for bad guys? And we respond so much to a good villain, and they didn't deliver that here. So I don't know what my objective is other than solving family squabbles, which have been going on for 10,000 years. So what part am I, the lowly, no superpower hero, going to have in this? I don't have the Echo. I don't have draconic lineage.
As someone who liked vanilla, like I liked not being important, I'm kind of down with that. And I'm not sure this was their intention, but when you ask who's the villain, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not even sure there is one. I kind of feel like it's just vibing with dragons. And if it's just vibing with dragons, I'm okay with that. I like the overall look of the expansion. I like the focus on the fun fantasy of hanging with dragons. I don't know how much of a focus that'll actually be in application, but in terms of this reveal, it worked for me. Like, all right, you want to? You ready to get on the cynical brain train?
Yes, please join me on my train.
If I were thinking about how I sell this, I'd be like, well, no one cares about the story anyway, so let's not focus on it. Because at the moment, Garrett, I do not care about the WoW story. I think it has crapped the bed. So showing me, here's a dragon playground. What's the story? Worry about it when you get there. I'm like, okay, cool. Like make your game look fun to play. And I think they accomplished that. And to me, it's coming from, in my brain, a little bit of a cynical place, but it doesn't bother me that much.
I'm so fervent about like the flying being good when they said like, if I turn on a dime, if it looks clunky and doesn't fulfill that dragon riding fantasy, then you've had a huge loss because you don't have a story to back it up.
Pre-explaining though, like really teeing things up, either like here is your villain front row center and it's very clear, or just here is your world. Who is the villain? What is our conflict? We don't know. They've done both, and they've had successes in World of Warcraft with that, and they've had, I think, failures with that, because the Mist cinematic, I don't know who the bad guy is. It doesn't show a Shah. It doesn't mention any of that. It doesn't even show Garrosh. And to me, I think that's one of the greatest expansions in World of Warcraft's lineage. And so that was one where I think it worked, where they were ambiguous about who the villain was, and it totally worked. Like it just made me want to go explore Pandaria, and while I was there, I got bought in just through playing it. So I think that can work as long as it's, it's quality and it's compelling.
You've got a good point there. The bait and switch of BFA is what really can ruin it, because N'Zoth was way cooler than any sort of storyline they presented with the war comes back to Warcraft.
And that was a sense of, I think, impatience too. So when they finally got there, it's like the final patch, it's N'Zoth. We're all like, yeah, we knew it was N'Zoth. We all knew it.
But go with me a moment. What if instead of, Stone Man and big kind of lore constructs like constructs pun, but like the Titans are, instead, walking on the misty beach of the Dragon Isles. Whoa, what's that in the book? Whoa, what was that? What was the bug flies by? Just kidding. It's like the cat kind of in a horror movie. Oh, bum, bum. And then T-Rex, dragon. Like, take the entire opening of original Jurassic Park, shoot ha, and just make it about like centaurs capturing dragons. Because there's going to be people capturing dragons. Like, small, grounded, personal stories is why Mists of Pandaria opener works. And it makes you go, what will I see in this world? Whereas here, we took the camera, we put it on top, and he said, you will see spires and waterfalls and Thor lasers and dragons and constructs. And I say, well, what part do I play?
To me, I like the Simac because it made me want to go soar on the back of a dragon. And then through the reveal, they're like, oh, by the way, you're going to get a dragon from the beginning and you're going to get better at flying it over the course of the expansion. I was like, oh, cool. That was a smart thing to focus on in your expansion. I don't know. It was like a theme park ride. Again, this isn't blowing my hair to the back of the auditorium, but this does look like something I want to try. This is something I'm going to play on launch day.
It depends on the Dragon Fantasy. Like, if you get in there and you're like, Kyle, dude, I hit the beach. They gave me a dragon. It's a really fun level up mechanic. Like, I'm really exploring this world. There's lots of unique little stories. For me, the World of Warcraft is a co-op game that I want to run dungeons in, and raiding is a bigger dungeon. It's just a lot in their current atmosphere. It's a lot of work to organize people of skill and have them not feel like they're bringing something down. And I know I'm not the best player in the world. I bring down the raid at times, but that's what makes it hurt more is when I know I'm not the best and things are still bad. My brain goes, whoa, this is a hellscape. I'm out.
Yes, as always, folks, like and subscribe. We do a video every Wednesday morning is when those release, and we stream every Monday afternoon and every Thursday evening for Final Fantasy XIV content. We will be starting Stormblood soon, and we're wrapping up Sky Pirates this Thursday night. It's going to be a good time. Thanks for watching, everybody. GG.
Like, this is too far. I hate nanomachines for that same reason, but that's a whole different tangent.
We could do a whole video on how much I hate nanomachines and they ruin every fiction that they get into.
Nanomachines are
post nanotech Marvel is the most homogenized bullshit I've ever seen.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so
Iron Man post 2, the suits are awful. I hate them.
Yeah, you gotta have the clunk and the
yes,
and
they can't get the briefcase suit. That's as small as I ever wanted to see an Iron Man suit shrink down to.
The Hulkbreaker, the one that's a spaceship and you climb inside, that one's okay. Like, there's
that one's because that one's old tech. It doesn't just appear out of thin air.